Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Have you ever wondered if this is as good as it gets? Today on rSpace, we find out what settling really means. My wife wanted an open marriage and tried to close it because my new partner was a better fit. I left her behind for the new girl. I, 42 male, have been married to my wife, 40 female, for 10 years now. And in that time, we've had an okay marriage. Honestly, there have been many times when I felt that I could have waited a little longer and found someone who was perfect for me, but she was good enough. I know that sounds like a horrible thing to say, but I was 32 when I got married, and I was tired of being lonely. Understand that I'm not saying that she's horrible, but sometimes I wish that I'd have had someone who loved the same things I loved from the very start. My mother told me back then that a partner doesn't always need to be an exact copy of you though, and I think that's what got me to eventually see her as the right choice for me. I know this is the kind of thing that people shouldn't say out loud, but I'm trying to speak from a logical and honest perspective, and I hope that all of you can understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not trash-talking her, but there certainly could have been someone better for me out there. I mean, I know this even more than ever now, thanks to something that happened, and I'm going to get to all of that, but I need to set up the appropriate background so that you can understand. Like most guys, I like getting intimate with my wife, and for the first 3 years of our marriage or so, things were great. The next 3 years were pretty crap comparatively, but I still managed to push through that aspect of our lives. The last 4 years, though, we've probably slept together only 20 times, and I wish I was exaggerating with that. I've talked with her about it time without number, and even suggested that we could try out a therapist that specializes in those kinds of things. But those conversations have never gone anywhere sensible. It seemed like she was completely fine with the status quo and didn't really put me into consideration. I had to resort to taking matters into my own hands, literally, when things got a bit too hot for me to handle and she wasn't responding to my advances. At a point, I just stopped making those advances entirely because I started to hate being rebuffed. As far as I was concerned, our marriage was kind of just bland, but I appreciated her companionship most of the time. I think my mood only really soured when it came to bedroom activities, but apart from that, I was fine being with her. It wasn't horrible. Now, considering how much I had felt tormented by the whole intimacy situation, I won't lie, I considered cheating on way too many frustrating occasions. But I think the key thing is that I never even came close to following those whims. I do feel guilty that I felt that way, but when the only person you're allowed to sleep with absolutely refuses to most months, why do you have to stay locked down? Now, with this in consideration, when my wife sat down with me one day to say that she wanted to talk about our bedroom affairs, I kept my cool on the outside, but inside, I was extremely excited. She typically acted like that part of our life did not exist at all, so hearing this from her was actually a big change of pace. Perhaps she had finally felt the need for us to try harder. I couldn't have been more wrong though, as the first thing she said after I let her know I was listening was, "I want us to open up our marriage." Hearing that dumbfounded me. Honestly, it was the last thing I would have expected her to say, and I think she saw how shocked I was. So she tried to explain herself, perhaps hoping that it would have made things better. She said that she felt like she was bored in the aspect of our lives. She kept emphasizing that it's not like sleeping with me was bad. On the contrary, she liked it a lot, but she claimed it was like having the same steak for 10 years straight. I rebuffed right away, saying that I had always been open to us spicing things up in different ways if she wanted something new, but she claimed that the problem wasn't the things we do, but the person she was doing it with. She said that someone new could be refreshing, and with new people sprinkled here and there, sleeping with me might regain some of its spark. Honestly, I didn't know how to feel about a lot of that. My ego was hurt, and I just sat there wondering what I was supposed to say in return to all of that. I let her know that I would think about it and excuse myself to go and take a long walk. It was during that walk that I realized that an open marriage would benefit me too, especially if I had been so starved. But it still wasn't something I really wanted to do. I was trying to look on the bright side though. If she wanted it that bad and was trying to hold our bedroom life to ransom by claiming that an open marriage would potentially solve our issues, I'd give her what she wanted. I didn't want it, but if she did, I would make sure that I put the freedom that it gives to very good use. So when I returned home, I let her know that I had thought about it. I was far from ecstatic about the idea, but because I loved her, I would try it out. She seemed extremely happy about that. The next day, she said we should talk about rules, which we did. No bringing them to the house, no sleeping with anyone we know, always use protection. She said we could talk about them if we wanted. I told her I didn't like that rule, so we scrapped that right away. And that was it. Things were official. She was instantly in a better mood. I wasn't. However, I promised myself that I wouldn't mope around and watch her body count double while I was being a cuck. I considered downloading Tinder, but I'm something of a nerdy guy and I felt I wasn't going to have very much luck in those arenas. Instead, I decided to explore options in the communities that I belong to. I knew it wouldn't be as quick for me as a dating app could be, but I was looking for quality. I know, kind of stupid when you're married. Anyway, it annoyed me beyond what I could have imagined when 2 days after we made our agreement, my wife dressed up all nice and said that she was going on a date. She was clearly in a very good mood, and that somehow annoyed me even more. She must have installed Tinder that very same night. At that moment, I really regretted having agreed to the whole thing, and I know a lot of you are going to say I never should have. I know that too. Looking back, it wouldn't have been excessive to just end things if she felt the solution to things was to start sleeping with other people. I had already agreed though, and I wanted to make sure I at least had a little fun considering. She came home past midnight, and I just pretended that I was asleep because I really did not want to see my wife when I assumed she had just returned from being railed by someone. The idea disgusted me. We didn't talk about it the next morning, but I knew at that point that I would have to start exploring my options. There's a lady in one of the Discord servers I'm on that I've always admired, and the new development made it possible for me to flirt with reckless abandon, so that was exactly what I did. I struck up a conversation with her and started to get a little flirty, and thankfully, she seemed to return a few of my comments. I've been trying to avoid it being explicit about what I'm really into because I've been judged quite a lot, but I'm massively into Lego and Gunpla. It's my primary hobby, and I think it is because I love the hands-on nature of it. This lady, let's call her Maria, let me know that she had bought a new Lego kit and that she'd love if we could build it together. She said it'd be a great opportunity for us to get to know each other better, and I agreed instantly. I chose the next evening for us to get started because I needed to mentally prep myself. She'd be the first person I was sleeping with apart from my wife in an entire decade. I would need to get protection and settle my anxiety. The evening of the same day, my wife went out yet again. Honestly, I was pissed, but I didn't show it. 2 nights in a row felt ridiculous to me. We weren't even a week into the new arrangement. It was so evident to me how much of a mistake I had made. Anyway, I took it on the chin because I had no choice. Eventually, the next evening came and I dressed up casually and let her know that I was heading out. She seemed extremely surprised, and it was clear she was holding herself back from saying something. Eventually, she decided on, "What are you going out for?" I let her know I was going to see a friend, and she just nodded. It very clearly annoyed her, and that simultaneously amused me and pissed me off. I just walked out though. When I got to Maria's house, we hugged. I passed her the bottle of wine I had stopped to buy, and then I entered the house. It was a pretty nice place, honestly. She had a table that she assigned for her building hobbies. She also liked Lego and building model anything, and that's where we went to sit to get started on the set. She had said it was going to be a surprise, and I was indeed surprised to see that we'd be building the Titanic set. I knew that was not going to be a one-day affair, but I was super excited because I'm always a big fan of the bigger sets. They're just a lot more satisfying to complete. Honestly, I couldn't believe it myself, but 3 hours later, we had made some good progress, had some snacks, drank some wine, and it was time for me to go back home. I hadn't made any moves on her, so nothing happened, but honestly, I didn't care a bit. I had actually had a lot of fun, and I let her know that I'd come again in a few days. By the time I returned home, my wife wasn't there. At that point, I started to have a very strong feeling that this whole open marriage thing was going to be the end of us, and that's even ignoring the red flag that such a request is in the first place. It seemed like we'd be barely spending evenings with one another if things continued the way they were. She eventually came back, and when she saw me, she started grinning. What she was doing was extremely childish because I could tell she was trying to feel like she got revenge for me daring to go out in our open marriage. She must have not liked being home alone and went to get plowed, and that was all she needed to feel better. She was trying to hide her smirk, but she wasn't doing a good job. "How did your time out go?" I let her know that we had spent the entire time building a Lego set and that it was fun. She just nodded and left the room. I think she believed me, and that made her happy. She was glad that I hadn't seemingly done anything. I reminded her as she was walking out that we weren't supposed to be inquiring from one another. She let me know she knew. I was supposed to wait a few days before I returned to see Maria, but honestly, I couldn't. I called her and let her know I wanted to come over and continue, and she was happy to hear that. My wife wasn't at home when I left. It was another day of building Lego, but with a lot more jokes and us getting to know each other better. Honestly, this woman was literally what I'd call the perfect fit for me. Even ignoring the physical good looks, all her interests aligned with mine, or were very close to them. Definitely a lot more so than when compared to my wife. I think it was at that point when I realized how great this woman was that I became a lot less interested in the physical aspect of things. We finished up that day and I returned home when my wife was back already. I guess she hadn't expected me to be out a second day in a row, unlike her who couldn't keep the men off her. Very sarcastically, she said, "Out building Lego again?" When I responded in the affirmative, she looked upset, but she didn't say anything. The next few days, I wasn't able to visit Maria on the daily, but we kept working on the Titanic on the days that we did. It was when we finally finished it, 2 weeks later, that one thing led to another, and we slept together. Maybe I was just starved, but it was fantastic. My wife wanted things open, and it was funny that I was finally seeing the light, though I honestly didn't care about finding anyone but Maria. Full disclosure, she knew I was married, and she knew the situation I was in. There was no way I'd have strung her along without letting her know. I don't know if my wife had been spying on me or something, but that same night, she said she wanted to talk with me. She claimed she wanted to break the rule where we didn't talk about our partners, and I asked her why, but she couldn't give a real reason. Unprompted, she started sharing about the people she had been sleeping with. There were 3 of them, apparently, in just 2 weeks and some change. She kept looking at me. I think she was trying to get a rise out of me, but I only cared a little. Definitely not as much as she'd hoped. Then she asked me to tell her about the people I was sleeping with. I think that was the only reason she decided to break the rule. She wanted to know about what I was doing. I could have told her no since we had an agreement at the start, but I wanted her to know about how great I found Maria, especially since she was asking for it. So I told her. I told her how we shared a lot of the same interests, how she enjoys the same kinds of media that I do, and how she's very kind and sweet. I then let her know that we only slept together that very night. That seemed to really upset her. "Why are you being so pathetic? You do know an open marriage is about sleeping with other people, right? Don't tell me you're trying to make friends with the hoe. It's been 2 weeks and you're only just sleeping with her?" Then she forced a laugh. I kind of just sat there because I certainly couldn't have anticipated such a pained response. I pretty much just shrugged in return. Then she said it, and I felt like laughing as loud as I could. "I don't want to do this open marriage thing anymore. I don't think you get it." Suddenly, I didn't get it because she was feeling threatened. I told her that we should continue with it since it was her idea, and it was a big one too. But she said, "I can change my mind if I want to. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." I let her know that that was fine, but I immediately told her I wanted a divorce. I don't know where that came from, but it was the way I felt. I think my feelings for her did a U-turn immediately with the open marriage thing, and now that I have someone else, we'll see what happens. But it made it so easy to finally take myself out of the just okay marriage that was getting worse. She got really mad with that and chucked the TV remote at my head, but I dodged it. After that, she just buried her head in her hands and started to cry. I wanted to tell her to pack her things when she was done, but I was scared that something heavier would get tossed at me next time. Long story short, I left the house for a bit. I've been out for 2 days, but I'm going to message her soon to move out. I'm also looking for a divorce attorney. I really think there's something special with Maria, and I'm not going to lose the chance to prove that. Update. Well, I wouldn't be a good OP if I didn't come to give the final update of the story of my wife who wanted an open marriage and ended up not wanting it anymore. I found Maria, who was more my type of a woman from top to bottom. I wasn't looking for a way out of my marriage, but the moment that request to open things up was made, I have to admit that my stance on the entire thing changed quite a bit. I think I became less empathetic towards that woman. I'm sort of glad that's how everything played out since I'm in such a better place. I reached out to a divorce lawyer as soon as I could. I was dreading the entire process, but I knew I'd have to get it out of the way quickly. I got her served with papers and the divorce proceedings eventually began. If you read the previous part, you'll be able to tell that she wasn't about to be reasonable, not the way things ended and the kind of jealousy that she was feeling. The whole thing was a mess and honestly, one of the most annoying periods in my life. But it eventually ended, and I think that's the most important thing. Because I wasn't exactly able to prove infidelity, it was hard for me to get a case that was strongly in my favor, but it was easy to prove that the open marriage was her idea, thanks to some text messages between us that mentioned it. In the end, I got to keep the house and most of the possessions that I cared about the most, including our car. When it came to money, I don't have to pay alimony, but I had to let go of almost 50% of what was in my bank account. That part certainly sucked, but it's a worthy price for me not to worry about her anymore. And as you must have guessed, I've started seeing Maria, and honestly, maybe it's a recency bias talking, but I don't think I was this happy when I started dating my ex-wife. Having someone that cares about the things you care about is just a different experience. The lesson that I learned from all this is that it is worth waiting for the person that is right for you. Suggesting an open marriage out of the blue, especially as a solution to intimacy problems, is a pretty big red flag. We all know that. Finding someone who shares your interests probably highlighted just how much you've been missing that deeper connection in your marriage. While it's unfortunate that it had to come through these circumstances, it seems like the entire experience has clarified what you want in a relationship. What do you make of this? And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon!